Sou Daniela Lemos, em nome do Fundecitrus, dou as boas-vindas a todos vocês que estão aqui com a gente para a 10ª edição da pesquisa de estimativa de safra PES. O Fundecitrus agradece a presença de todos vocês que estão aqui presencialmente conosco no auditório. Há 10 anos iniciamos esse trabalho em benefício do setor.
For the benefit of the sector. Since then, there have been many innovations, technological advances, and of course some challenges. But one thing hasn't changed. It is the commitment, year after year, of everyone involved to deliver the best and most accurate estimate of the orange crop for all of us and for the world. For yet another year, we're holding our meeting in a hybrid format. Here, in the Fundecitrus auditorium, we have the presence of more than 100 people, and we are also live on our YouTube channel with simultaneous translation into English. At the moment, people in more than many countries are watching us, so welcome. Would like to remind you that the annual announcement of the crop forecast survey follows a strict system of confidentiality until the date of publication. This is provided for in a contract signed between the companies and institutions that work directly on the data, including Fundecitrus itself. All of this is necessary for defense of competition, thus preventing any disclosure or sharing of individual information and competitive content from occurring among orange juice companies which collaborate with Fundecitrus in the research, and also among the citrus growers themselves. Everyone can see here on the screen that we are currently following live the departure of the members of the Crop Forecast Survey Committee. They have been meeting until now, finalizing the figures that will be released shortly.
Cercados de toda essa confidencialidade.
That have a lot of confidentiality to them. They walk to our auditorium, they're going through the access hallway to the building's reception to come to this auditorium where we are now and share with us this much awaited figure. In order to ensure the reliability of this estimate that will be released shortly, we would like to remind you that the cell phones of all the members of the technical team have been withheld. Therefore, the information was restricted only to the president of Fundecitrus, Dr. Lorival Carmo Monaco, the general manager of Fundecitrus, Juliano Aires, supervisor and specialist of pest and research partners, Mark Estrat, as well as two full professors of Unesp Jaboticabal and USP-FEA Ribeirão Preto, who make up this team. The team members are already arriving here at the entrance to our auditorium. To kick off our event, I call on all members to join us here in the Fundecitrus auditorium in Araraquara, in the state of São Paulo. President of Fundecitrus, Lorival Carmo Monaco, General Manager of Fundecitrus, Juliano Aires, Executive Coordinator of PES, Vinícius Trombin, also from Marquestrat. Please join me here on stage. And please be seated. Political, institutional, and methodological coordinator of PES, Marquestrat advisor and professor at USP Ribeirão Preto and FGV, Marcos Fava Neves, Unesp professor and statistics coordinator, José Carlos Barbosa, PES specialist, Roseli Reina, and field supervisor, Fernando Delgado. Please take your seats here in the reserved chairs. At this point, cell phones are handed out to the committee members because, as we said, they had been withheld for confidentiality reasons. We would also like to thank the following researchers from Embrapa Territorial: Lucila Alves Magalhães, Lauro Rodrigues Nogueira Júnior, and José Roberto Miranda. Thank you so much.
Gente, vamos passar pouquinho aqui para vocês como é que vai ser o cronograma dessa manhã.
The timetable for this morning, how this event is scheduled.
Está dividido em 4 etapas. Nós vamos ter daqui a pouquinho a apresentação do vídeo institucional da PAS.
The institutional video of PAS, and then the crop announcement, and then the presentation of the main data for the crop estimate, and then the Q&A session from those here present and those joining us by our YouTube channel. If you are following this meeting on YouTube and would like to send a question, you can do so by using the QR code that is here on screen. Don't forget to also send you your name and the city or country from which you're following us, so that we can share that information with our public here present. All questions will be answered at the end of our presentation. That's going to be agreed, okay? So now I would like to invite everyone present and those who are following us online to watch our institutional video for PAS 2024-2025, which shows the importance of this work developed in partnership with citrus growers in the state of São Paulo and West-Southwest Minas Gerais, the largest orange-producing region in the world. We have to be proud of it. Let's follow along. Countryside of São Paulo. Fundecitrus science towards it.
What do you think about getting really close to the sky? A poet made a poet which said, "Because I am the size of what I see, I'm not the size of my height." Exactly 10 years ago, all of us, orange growers, orchard keepers, decided to look at the citric culture from a different perspective. What if our activity were even more democratic, more transparent, more professional, more sustainable? Thinking of us, of course, but also thinking of you. Thinking about the next and following generations yet to be conceived, coming to existence under our care before they tread and fly over the world. Generations that from their village we see how much of the earth can be seen from the universe. But how would we map hundreds of thousands of hectares? A accurately demarcating where citrus is in the vastness that doesn't fit the horizon. To the courage, questions bring about no hesitation. They set dreams in motion. Through the air, there is a vehicle equipped with state-of-the-art technological eyes, birds of prey in the form of cutting-edge equipment that can go higher, much higher than a hot air balloon. Satellites. Dreams fly high. Feet are kept on the ground. By land, we confirm every measurement. We sample, check, assess, we audit with methodological and operational improvements every year. From the springs of impartiality, confidentiality, credibility, the course towards trust runs. The Fundecitrus Crop Forecast Survey has revolutionized Brazilian citrus growing. In the same second, here in the United States, here and in Europe, here and in Asia, here and elsewhere. In this village and in all others, everyone finds out the production number for the season at the same time. Everyone has the same conditions to negotiate. From the land of governance, trees of respect grow in all relationships. The Fundecitrus Crop Forecast Survey unites citrus growers, buyers, and juice processors who supply Brazil and the world. Bottlers, brands, supermarkets, consumers, society, and nature. With the Fundecitrus tree inventory, citrus growers can understand the moment and trends. They can plan for the long term. They can make decisions guided by precise data. To navigate is necessary, isn't it? The tree inventory, which throughoutly maps the São Paulo and Minas Gerais citrus belt, is the basis for citrus disease surveys, serving as a guide for phytosanitary actions. It is the basis for government work in partnership with the sector to calculate the carbon stock in trees, soil, preserved native vegetations on citrus farms, and to measure the fauna present in citrus-producing regions in São Paulo and Minas Gerais. Citriculture is committed to biodiversity. Seeing to understand. Seeing to organize. Over the last 10 years, citrus growers have earned a higher income, managed to plan more strategically, contributing to economic, social, environmental, and cultural development that citriculture creates. Our wealth, shared with the world in a glass of orange juice that gives us energy in the morning. Wealth that can only be expanded if we can see it. The poet was more emphatic. Because our only wealth is seeing, what are we going to see now?
What a beautiful record of our citriculture and how the sector has a positive impact on the environment, preserving it and contributing to reducing the impact of global warming. What a joy for all of us to be able to be part of the sector, also building our own history. Let's continue our meeting, moving towards the announcement of the 2024-2025 crop forecast. We remind you that the announcement of the orange crop forecast for the São Paulo and West-Southwest Minas Gerais citrus belt has been carried out by Fundecitrus since 2015 in cooperation with Marcus Stratt and professors from Unesp Jabuticabal and USP Ribeirão Preto. PES data is very important because it provides a snapshot of our citrus belt, contributing to the planning of the sector and for citriculture to maintain its economic and social competitiveness. Once again, we would like to remind you that the data that will be released was restricted only to the president of Fundecitrus, Dr. Lorival Carmo Monaco, Fundecitrus General Manager Juliano Aires, PES supervisor and specialist and research partners, Marcus Stratt, Unesp Jabuticabal, and USP Ribeirão Preto, all of them committed to keep the information confidential until it's made public. Well, let's go then. Time has come for the announcement of the 2024-2025 crop. The president of Fundecitrus, Dr. Lorival Carmo Monaco, to the stage to make this long-awaited announcement. Dr. Monaco? Good morning, everyone. It's up to me to say the number. 232 million. 232,340,000 boxes, 24% less than the previous crop. Dr. Monaco, I'd like to please repeat the first number because we have a little interference here. 232 million. 380,000 boxes. Thank you so much, Dr. Monaco. Numbers are going to be shown here on our screen so that you can see it and you can follow along the presentation of this 2024-2025 crop. And following now, we are going to understand the details of this crop forecast. And for that, I would like to invite Juliano Aires, that is the General Manager of Fundecitrus. You that are with us online on our YouTube channel, please send your questions through WhatsApp by using the QR code that is here on screen. Questions will be answered after the presentation. Juliano, over to you.
Bom dia.
Good morning.
O número surpreendeu ou não?
Is this figure surprising?
Nos surpreendeu.
This figure that has just been announced, well, it surprised us. In 10 crops, this is the smallest ever. So we have climate events that affected citriculture. We had 3 weather events. We are today celebrating the 10th anniversary of PES and 20 years of greening in the state of São Paulo. So the approach we have today is going to be more in-depth. We're going to be talking about the past, present, and future. And I'm going to share my presentation because Dr. Monaco, he asked me to do a lot of work. So this presentation is going to be shared with Vinicius. He's going to talk about the methodological part, and I'll be responsible for figures. And we'll be focusing on the inventory, the crop, and also the greening. What's going on and where we are heading towards here in worldwide. Because citriculture, to keep competitive, needs or depends on our overcoming this barrier that is greening, and we will do so. So I have some good points for us to ponder. Clicker's not working? Sorry, technology fails sometimes. Anyhow, coming back to this figure, 232 million boxes, but there's an interesting characteristic here, as you can see. That is a crop concentrated on the first and second bloom, and there is a fourth bloom as well. 215 million first, second, and third bloom. And 7% of the fruit from the fourth bloom. This is atypical. The fourth bloom has always been 1, 2, 3%. Today, because of a compensatory effect, and we're going to talk about this, you see that it is significant. So this crop is not as small because we do have the 7% from the fourth bloom. And what's going on then? Here we can see the plant, 93% first, second, and third bloom fruits. So here we have first, second, and third bloom, 215 million, 93%, whereas 16% more or less, or 7% of the fourth bloom. This year, we have had to really, work hard to deal with this fourth bloom, because it never happened before. Orange trees have the small fruitlet, and in some cases, a lot of flowers. And when we have something like that, then you resort to science. I had the privilege of having as a professor the top physiologist in the world, José Luis Guardiola, and in his work, he has shown that out of 100 flowers, we have 3% top of fruit, from 0.1 to 3% tops. So we considered in this spectrum that we have like 12% of our trees had flowers on them, 3% of fruit setting, and in the fruitless that we counted in the fourth bloom, out of every 3 fruitlets, 1 is going to set. It is a percentage that is relatively high. Why is that so? Because orange trees have, few trees, so it's an offset effect. Now the temperature is lower as a trend, but also there is a trend of drought coming in the next 6 months. We are going to have a 30-40% less rainfall in the next half year. So we had to deal with the size, fruit drop, bloom. So there's a lot of science behind this figure. This figure is not, just like a guesstimate. So let's see how the crop and harvest were in 2023 and 2024. Vinicius? Hello? Good morning, everyone. So we're going to share this presentation this time. It's always a responsibility to bring all the figures to you. It's such a careful and well done work. So it's always very, exciting to us. So last year crop, how was it? We had the time of rainfall in the beginning of the crop. So last year, rains were good in the first half, even above historical average, 5% above. And that helped us grow early oranges. But as of the second half, then we had a drought. It was a very important climatic adverse event influencing evapotranspiration, and the late oranges were affected, and the early as well. So the late and pera decreased in production. The balance was like 7% difference between the initial expectations that we had made last year. Towards the end, there was the end of the crop in April this year. Vinicius, 0.7 is good, or you want it 0? 0 is impossible, but 0.7 is good, right, Professor Barbosa? I always have the help of the brilliance of Professor José Barbosa to help you do the math and bring reliable figures to you. So let's talk about the factors that affect the current crop, the one we're starting now, 2024, 2025. What happened in the last few months that are influencing this crop? First point that I'd like to highlight here is climate conditions. So we have the high temperatures, heat waves, and also low rainfall volume. This is an example of our groves in August. We see the drought. Remember, Vinicius, that only 36% of the trees that are mature are irrigated. 64% are not. So in May, we had the drought period first, so almost no rain. 5 millimeter for the citrus planted area that stressed plants and also caused the accumulation of reserves in the plant. The flora induction started in late May when rains picked up, as we can see in the graph. That means 98% of the municipalities of the citrus belt had rain on May 31st. So rains continued in June. We had rainfall in June, mid-month, and then 51 millimeters in the citrus belt. Rains ended in June, 6 millimeter, only in July rather. But the May and June rainfall brought trees to flower with its peak in the second half of August. Afterwards, in September, a month after flowering peak, we had high temperatures in the citrus planted area, average 38 degrees Celsius, and the whole citrus belt. Votuporanga had the record temperature of 42 degrees Celsius, but the average and the heat wave reached 40 degrees in Votuporanga, Rio Preto 39, Bebedouro 38, Duarte do Matão 37. So the heat came from the north down. The region of Itapetininga is the one that least suffered because of temperature and also Avaré. Vinicius, if you allow me, I think that this year, besides our having several events, it's remarkable that the temperature was much higher for several days. What do you tell me about this comparatively? We have had 3 heat waves. In October, right after this first heat wave, we had the rain, but right after, in November, we had another heat wave that was very comprehensive and lasted more than 10 days, consecutive days, coming to up to more than 35 degrees Celsius. So that was the second heat wave. And then November rains made it possible. Remember we had the June, July, August, no rain. And then in November, when rains picked up, we had another bloom in mid-December, reaching its peak of the third bloom, then from 8th to 14th December. But then we had yet another heat wave at the time of the third bloom in all the citrus belt, affecting fruit setting. Juliano, what's then the effect of this all on the crop? I'd rather someone that, there is like a lot of citrus growers here. I'm not a young person, but I started in citriculture because my father used to grow oranges. He was a smallholder. So I think I've witnessed more than 40 cycles in citriculture. I've never seen a year like this. Each year is different, but this year was even more atypical. It's a year when we're having 4 blooms, and we're going to discuss here why did we have this drop, and why is it that in Southwest was the least affected, and why also regions like Brotas, Porto Ferreira, and Limeira had even more severe effect because we added adverse climate and the greening in those affected regions. I'm going to be trying to be brief, but let me recap some presentations here. They are basic in terms of physiology, which are important for us to understand that all. Remind yourselves that the orange trees have a fruit drop or flower drop in 3 situations. At the time of flowering, if it's stress, temperature, and drought, when the fruitlet is small, then the peduncle will let it fall, or when it's the time of a marble, the size of a marble. So out of 100,000 flowers, we're going to have 500, 100, 200 set, depending on the nutritional situation, the root reserves, and what determines it all is linked to a critical time that for us is from September, October to November. If the orange tree has stress that is important, then we have a hormonal process that I'm going to simplify, where one amino acid will induce the production of ethylene. Ethylene is almost like a defense system for the plant. If the plant is threatened by stress, many days of high temperature, what's going to happen? The plant, in order to survive, will drop the flower, drop the fruit down. This year the temperature was really high after all those flower inductions. So this process happened in a consecutive way. The first bloom was affected in one region, and then the second bloom, and then the third bloom, and then because of there being not a lot of fruit, there was a fourth bloom. It starts in the root system, and they may be triggered by high temperature, low humidity, and water shortage. But temperature is the most remarkable one. Above 35 degrees Celsius, the situation is at risk in the post-flowering for orange. When the fruit is already set, no problem. You're just going to have a drop later on because of diseases or because the fruit is too ripe. So what we do is try and have the top fruit set. Floral induction is due to cold weather or irrigation. And what's the most important here is the region, because of the temperature in the post-flowering, and that varies with every year. The El Nino phenomenon, in fact, is remarkable. Well, you say the world has changed. No, that has always been the case. There's a little trend of increased temperature, but we are going through a cycle with the more effect of high temperatures and El Nino that has affected citriculture. Why is that so? 64% is in the rain-fed area. What about the other 33? They are protected? No. If you have a high temperature, 37, 38 degrees, you only advance that. So one of the strategies for you to deal with at a during drought is to have an early irrigation, which is possible in some municipalities. Like in Brotas, the smaller fruitlet on October 4th here, and then or November 30th, you see the drop in the size of an olive, and other regions like in Mogi, a lot of greening, a lot of effect. Itapetininga, night temperature, it's lower, right? And also during the day, it's a little lower, so it's a milder effect, as Vinicius showed the difference between regions. Or among all the regions. And what about the fourth bloom? Then never happened so intense. It was only 1 or 2%. This year 7. One person would say 5, 8, 15, but in some areas it came up to 3%. 2% the fourth bloom, whereas some other places was like 15 or 20%. So it was really complicated for us to come to a final equation. Some will say 7 is little, some will say 7 is a lot, because it depends on each growth situation. How have we come to a balance? You know, Vinicius is going to talk about this new fact. Greening is increasing, so we usually had 1,600 samples. Now is 2,300. In the previous years, and because of economic regions, we were not able to have a higher size sample. This is a grove in Duartina with little fruit, and look at the flowering. 7% is little, you would say, but this is an exception. It's not everywhere. It's the most nourished grove, favorable weather. Here's an example of the fourth bloom. See the size or the amount of fruitlets in the sample for Itapetininga. This is a Valencia, 3 to 10 years old, with no good fruit setting before. So this year, as we say, and as we say here in the country, it's going to be a tossed salad, a mix, because we have different situations. There's no rule, and it was really hard for us to estimate the number. It was the hardest year to estimate the crop for so far. This is yet another example. Avaré, pera, orange, first bloom. And look at the fourth bloom. See the size of the fruitlet? So that has always been tabulated, measured, thought of, pondered on, and everything we have here, whatever it is, good or bad, we got it right or wrong as a group, because we use a lot of science and heard many and a lot. You see Rio Grande do Sul with this flood. This is a total social and economic chaos. The projection is for us to have the next 6 months with a 40 millimeter lower rainfall and higher temperature. So this is a scenario in which rains are going to be below historical average, 20% below. And the temperature is going to be higher. So here we have what we had in terms of rainfall. It was well distributed, but rainfall was 38% lower than the historical average till February. And what we project, not we, but the scientific companies in this area, they project or forecast 20% less from now on. So that is an effect that may cause the fruit not to grow so much and may affect also fruit drop. All this stress. We depend a lot on the climate, because not always what we project really happens. We have to have a projection. But what about fruit drop? Remember, we have 4 factors. Number of trees, and you're going to see that decrease a little bit. Vinicius is going to talk about it. Number of fruit, size of fruit, that will depend on the equation that we are also going to show with the high color relation, and the fruit drop. Fruit drop is the most difficult topic, with the increased greening and the pests and diseases, made the situation very complex. And that's why we have to have a higher number of fruit or trees in the sample. So what have we done differently? Here, we always try to innovate, and we are humble to see that we have to improve. slides are not moving as fast as I would like them to. But anyhow, this is the historical comparison. You're going to see that the historical average in the past, when we had more hectares, was 350 million boxes. This level started to go down, and then it went down to 320, and now we have this downward trend in the last 4 or 5 crops to have a decreased crop. So 314 here, and now we have 232. So the remarkable effect here is not greening. I can say that it was climate related. The greening effect, 38%, the severity is increasing, but it's yet to come. So let's talk about that, and let's discuss the present and the future. So the methodology, it's something that belongs to those that study more than I do, like Vinicius, Barbosa. So Vinicius, you're just holding the mic. Let's work a little bit. So this time, really would like to talk about methodology. It's a mathematical equation, and we have the field survey so that we can know the size of the number of trees, the number of fruit, and then we project the number of fruit per box. This year, we always improve year after year. And this year we have the announcement that is online of all the data for the 10-year period. It's a lot of information that's going to be available today as of noon. As soon as we finish here, it's going to be online on our website, so you can see all that information about the 10 years, and you have all the tables, and it's going to be much more dynamic online this year. So today we announced the crop, and as of tomorrow we start, not tomorrow but Monday, we'll start to go to the field to measure the size of fruit, fruit growth, and fruit drop, and then we'll announce that in September, December, February, and April with the crop forecast updates. Today, all our data is segmented by sector, so we know exactly how much is dropping in the south and then the north. That is maybe different because of a phytosanitary difference. It was not the case in the past, but now we have this, clarity of information. This is our field survey. It's a large team that, they're very committed. They do their best job to bring us reliable data. Also, we have the support from the technical committee that is here with us, that have worked with us for the 10-year period, going to the field, also, telling us, be attentive to this type of disease and this and that going on the crop, so that you can capture data from the field. So thank you very much for the technical committee. So when we look at all the oranges, we have had insignificant variation. So we have here table orange and the main orange varieties. We have had a drop in the area for table oranges and an increased area for the most important orange varieties, 800 to almost 1,000, a little variation. So when we look at the detail for the main orange varieties, here we see how much plantings of last year, plantings that took place in 2023, exceeded or did not offset eradication. So here in the southwest, we see that the plantings in 2023 were 3,159 hectares more than what's been eradicated there at the same time. So regions with more eradication are in the south. So the plantings of 2023 did not exceed the eradication in the south. And so it was minus 4,400 trees. Can we go back to the slide a little bit, if you allow me, Vinicius? Here? There. Here we can see that in an area where we had 64,000 hectares, almost 4,500 were eradicated in 1 year. It's a lot. And why is that due to? Greening effect. plants started to come to level 3 and 4 of the disease, and so the yield will drop 25-30%. So you see that there is a correlation that is very high and direct between eradication and planting in terms of the disease incidence. Citrus growers are not fool. They learn, they reinvent, they learn, and they have, mastered CVC, citrus canker, but now they are dealing with greening. Now, when we look at the whole citrus belt, we see that we had 857 hectares planted, more than what was eradicated last year. Here, when we look at mature groves, what happens in mature groves? Planting of 2021 migrates now to the mature grove category. So here we see how much plantings of 2021 was higher than the eradication of last year. So when did that take place? In the central region, where we have a growth of mature groves, southwest. So back then in 2021 we planted a lot in the southwest. That's why now this planting that is now considered to be a mature growth category overpass or exceeds 4,055 the eradication this year. Now we see the plantings for 2023 last year as compared to 2021. So where did we plant more recently last year as compared to 2021 that now are considered to be mature? We planted here more in the north and northwest and no longer planted in the central, south and southwest and in the same intensity as in the past. Now we have 52,000 hectares of inventory of trees that will become mature. Data is obtained by field surveys and also from the Secretary of Agriculture. This year we have the census starting in August, and then we're going to announce that in May next year we're going to have measurements in the field plot by plot. This is an estimate that will be updated with real data that will come from the census that will start in August this year. Vinicius, let's go back again to the previous slide, please. This slide is very important. Brazilian citrus growers, they're not fool. No citric culture is more competitive and has a braver citrus growers than ours. And I know citrus growing worldwide. We have dealt with sudden death, CVC, canker, and we said, well, the citriculture is going to end, and then the great villain came about, that is the greening, and then they said, well, now we are going to really have to face the beast, but now it's a different type of beast. So what is the citrus grower doing? They learned that they have to plant in isolated areas where the inoculus is, smaller in amount. There's no way they can plant next to a contaminated grove if you do not have a regional control. And this insect has become a different beast, a different animal. The psyllid today is not the same psyllid we had in the past. We have consistent data to show that. So citrus growers, they prefer to face heat, climatic events, and they are changing different places to plant, like Minas, Mato Grosso, Goiás, and farms where there is a little bit of an isolation, so the risk is lower of the disease to occur. Just like to make that comment. Now let's talk about varieties. Are you, or am I going to talk about it? Pera variety. Why pera? Well, the major curve, the top curve that we have in harvest refers to pera variety. What's the best variety for NFC? What's the best variety for the market? It's like the mother variety, but it does have some inconvenience. It's not as productive, but with technology, we have pera groves today with very high yield. So for citrus growers, they choose to increase pera variety in their groves. because the price pays off, that we have to plant more pita, and for better distribution. So let's plant it more. What about density? Well, as for density, studies have always shown that planting density for the rootstocks that we have worldwide is between 450, 480 plants. Why has it increased at this time? Because the greening, you can see that as of 2004, we had the density close to the ideal one, 450 plants, and then if you lose a little bit in the beginning, you gain a little bit to the ends, but now we are at the level that is within the margin of errors, 580 and or so. It's stabilized. This is a sample size. Today the level will vary. Some places will plant 560 or so, depending on the variety, the climate, the rootstock, and we know that part of the plants are going to be lost in the first 5 or 6 years due to greening. That's why we increase density. Now plantings for 2022, it was a record, 28,000 hectares. This last year it dropped. Who can explain that? Maybe Marcos Fava. Everything has to do with money, right? Everything is correlated to money. So juice price, orange price, and planting. So, and the effect we'll be seeing in 2 or 3 years. But why is it that it went down if our price is coming up? We have a record price for orange. Citrus growers are aiming at where to plant. They say, sometimes I have to wait and buy or lease a farm over there. So they're prospecting area. So this is momentous, or rather, a spot trend, of a citrus grower finding or trying to find other areas to plant. We are going to offset those areas like we did in the past with other diseases. So here we see the balance between eradicated in brown. We see what's been eradicated per region, and in green how much has been planted in the last year per region. Votuporanga increased new plantings, 3,493 planting, and eradication is low, 1,600 eradicated hectares. Southwest Minas Gerais, 2,664, 1,607. So it's like 1,000 hectares balance. Brotas, Porto Ferreira, and Limeira, the opposite. We have more eradication than new plantings in those 3 regions, confirming the 3 regions with the top greening incidence. It's a direct correlation. It's predictable. Some regions, like in Araraquara in the past, where the disease came up, the best alternative will be to keep the mature growth, wait for a second moment to have a crop absent area, and then you have eradication as the last step. Sometimes you have an isolated region where you can plant. You clean the area around it and you plant. So, if we have more greening, more severity, increased eradication. And the opposite, Votuporanga and Southwest Minas, where the lowest incidence of greening, this is where we have new plantings more. In the balance, it's positive. More plantings than eradication last year. Limeira, 2 pictures where we see eradication of growths completely, and also the removal or eradication of plants with greening, especially in the younger growths. And here also we see the edge of the plot. Here, this side, there is a mature growth. So to protect this growth, we have the eradication taking place more intensely now than we have seen in the past. Vinicius, this picture on the left is the drama that we are living. The edge effect, border effect, take places in Florida when we have the diaphragma, and when we have, and we have that in Sao Paulo as well. The first 200 meters will have 80% of a psyllid. Renato is one of the Bazanese is one of the first people to show that that happens everywhere. Probably in this case, we had a mature growth to the side with this effect, especially in the first 30 to 50 meters. Towards the inner part of the plot, you decrease the number of eradicated plants. Just would like to add that comment. Now let's see the numbers for this crop of fruit per tree, and that's what we're going to see now. So talking about trees, orange trees, how many trees we have? 169 million, 0.2 million bearing trees, almost the same as last year's. We have no variation significant because we have the 2021 plantings and 12 million plants, and we have 22,000 hectares with a lower density coming out, and also 2 million plants. So it's about the same size, and that has been the case in the last few years. Next year, we expect this not to happen because look, we have a tree inventory of 33 million and we are going to 35 million. In the 2023 planting, almost 29,000 hectares, they have 16,000 or million trees. So if our estimates for planting hold true, then we're going to have 16 million trees that will enter productive time. We will be bearing next year, and then we're going to have a stability in this year to come because of the largest planting that took place in 2021. So estimates 2,560 trees, and here's trees of original planting. They produce lower than the other plants in the plot. If we didn't have this estimate of replanting, we would have a crop that would be 3% more because we would be considering fruit of the tree that are not bearing because of competition, shading. So in general, we have 29% decrease or fruit drop per tree, but we have 24% lower in the crop, lower figure in the crop, 29%, 24%, 5%. 5% is the fruit growth. That is, fruits will grow more this crop and offset the fruit drop. 5% more growth, yes. 29% in general, 5 percentage points. So we have had here Rio Preto with 58% drop, and a region here that was worse because it's the second consecutive year of fruit drop. That's what happened, for instance, in Votuporanga, second year in a row. Matão, second year in a row of drop. Duartina, Brotas, Porto Ferreira, Limeira. Those are the regions where we had drop for the second consecutive year. Duartina, third year in a row. This is a very nice correlation because we have a high coefficient here. So it's a negative and inverse correlation. The highest the temperatures in regions here, for instance, we have Votuporanga in one end, São José do Rio Preto, higher temperatures. And Itapetininga and Varé, lower temperatures. And then we see the average temperature of the whole time post-flowering up to March 31st. So from September to March 31st. In this temperature average, we have Itapetininga and Avaré with more fruit and lower temperature, Votuporanga and Rio Preto with less fruit and highest temperature. So what happens, Juliano? See, when the question is hard, I always ask my professor to answer. Come here, Barbosa. Tell me about this equation, if it's a good equation, because I cannot do this any longer. I cannot talk about regression, so tell us. Good morning. Juliano asked me to explain this graph. This graph represents the effect of temperature on the number of fruit per tree. So here we have a reduction of more or less 61 fruit for each degree of temperature that is higher. like in Tapetininga, the average temperature for the period was 29 degrees. And we had 650 or 670 fruits. As we increase the temperature in the regions of Avaré, Altinópolis, Brotas, then you increase the temperature, the curve reduces. Here, 61 fruit fewer in the number of fruits per tree. So here, 34, 35 degrees, number was 200 and something fruit. So it is a very important effect of the temperature in the fruitlet setting, when we have the flowering with a certain number of flowers, and then we have the heat waves that really reduced a lot the number of fruit per tree. So this drop is explained by this variation of 29 to 35 degrees in the average temperature for those regions. Thank you. Thank you, Professor. Hold on, Vinicius. Can we break the ice now? All the difficult questions that I cannot answer, I asked Barbosa to do so. You know why, Marcos? Because I heard in the grapevine that he is the top professor at Unesp. You know, he's always been a genius. He denies it, but I have to acknowledge his great help together with our committee. And this number is really reliable then. Go on, Vinicius. So this is number of fruit per tree along the crop since 2015 to 2024. So you see a general reduction in all regions except Avaré and Itapetininga that increase. Most of all the others are going down in that number. The other thing that draws our attention in this graph is that Altinópolis has the top average in the crops, more than 750 trees per, fruits per tree in Altinópolis. And the regions, here, 748, 738 in Avaré, 691. Altinópolis seems to be the best region, but when I look at the details, we see a much more variation between crops to the regions towards the north than to the southwest. That is something that Juliana is going to explain about. Think of something basic. What interferes in temperature? Oh, latitude and altitude. So what happens? Avaré and Itapetininga, when we look in the map, are in the southernmost region with the night temperature and daily temperature that are lower, and that will cause less hormonal balance effect to drop the fruit. The difference is remarkable. The other effect is, you're going to say, what about Altinópolis? Some people are privileged. Dr. Monaco told me, and every day I learn from him, he said that he planted orange in Taquaritu, but that is one of the worst places in the States to plant. You know, it's isolated. And our President Roberto Young, you know, planted in this other area. So here we have 800-meter altitude. Can you plant coffee there? No, because the climate is the determining factor. You don't change climate. So here we have the climatic effect post-setting, and that's the correlation that Barbosa explained. It is a direct correlation. When I saw that, I couldn't believe it. And I said, Barbosa, is that possible? And he said, yes, this is a very high correlation. So if you plant in the adverse climate areas, you have to know how to work with irrigation to, you know, get away from this problem. In the cooler areas, you don't have that problem. Please go on. Here, when we have the average among varieties, you see that there's not a lot of difference this year. So early varieties that produce the most this year are not producing as much, and they're very close among varieties. So here we have a northern, south, western grows, and we put them all in the same math. So that makes them to tend to reaching an average, which is not common. The common thing is what happened last year, for instance. The early ones producing more than pera and more than average. Here, the distribution per bloom, 64% first, 18% second bloom. We also see here this fruit that is more mature or more that's ripe the peak of the first bloom was August. The crop last year that closed this year, the flowering peak was in October, November. So now we are 2 months difference, 2 months before the peak of last crop. So we are much more advanced as compared to last crop. We see that in the field taking place. So the fourth bloom accounts for 7% of the crop, but that's average. When we look at Itapetininga, we have here 15% of the fourth bloom. That picture that Juliano showed was Itapetininga's. Matão, 13%. So those are the two regions where the fourth bloom was most significant than average. Now, the projection for the final fruit size. We took into consideration the number of fruits on the trees, first and second blooms added up. So 4 variables. And also the rain that takes place in May, June, and July. So the forecast by Clima Tempo for the citrus belt is that May, June, and July are 38% below the historical average. So 113 millimeters historical average. And for this period, we consider in the regression 70 millimeter of rainfall. So we have a lower rainfall, fewer fruit in the trees, and that favors the growth of fruit. But on the other hand, we have a reduction of the production because of this rain. If the rainfall is different in terms of volume, we have to update the forecast that will show up in the next publication, September and December. So here, 169 grams per fruit is higher than last year, 160 last year. In the last few years, we see the climate as a problem most of the times. And at least in the 5 crops out of the 10, had the adverse climate. That's why we have smaller fruit. Juliano, I'd like you now to better explain what the effect is on the fruit drop rate expected for this year. This year was really hard for us to define that rate. It was a puzzle, really. If greening is increasing, how is the drop moving from 19 to 18.5? You gotta be brave to announce this number. What happens is that we have the crop of the first and second bloom. They're very strong. They're maturing really fast with the heat, and the juice companies are going to process the fruit really fast. We're not going to have time for fruit to drop. So we are betting that even with the phytosanitary condition, with the greening that tends to drop the fruit earlier, the maturation of the fruit will allow an early harvest. In this game, we chose to have just half a point below what we projected last year. Last year, part of the fruit that dropped was processed. Was interfere in the processing. And now with this lower harvest, we're going to have more labor, so we can harvest faster, so that the drop is going to be lower. So I've already commented part of this. I said, well, greening is increasing. And then I would ask the researchers, isn't the drop increasing? Remember that this greening, this disease will affect the plant, firstly in the root system. At severity 1, nothing much happens. At severity 2, a little bit. It starts to affect when we have severities 3 and 4. So today, the main cause of a fruit drop is greening. 38% of plants are affected, and half of that are at level 3, 4, and advanced 2 stages. And what tends to happen then? That tends to increase because tends to increase. It's a trend. And then fruit fly and fruit borer are also present. Also, we have the black spot. This year we also have a fruit peel cracking because of the alternance of rainfall and drought. We have more dense growths that require trimming more. Also we have mechanical drop of fruit. All that is taken into account. Here we have a figure that is very important. We have to really put together the disease severity, that is incidence, how many plants are diseased, and how severe symptoms are. So we see that we increased here and increase again, but where is the highest increase? Limeta, 17% is there. When you go to northwestern, this is the place where we have the least disease. Why is it that Bebedouro, Barretos, western, west of Minas Gerais have less? Because if you look at Itapetininga, we have almost 9%. And here, Vinicius has explained, and we have to speed up for us to have some Q&A time for the towards the end. Here, 168.5 million bearing trees, 453 fruits per tree. Fruits are going to grow a little bit more. Fruit drop a little bit lower, almost the same, and fruit per box, lower number. And what's going on with yield? We have a trend a long time to increase yield, but with this effect of temperature that is really high and adverse climate, the yield went down significantly. It went down, 300 boxes approximately. It's a lot per hectare. So you see that in the last few years, we have had these figures. And what's important to highlight about it is that see the crop forecast per tree. The variety that is least productive is pera, 1.2 kilo, 50 kilo of orange per tree. It's too little. What's the best? The best one, 1.5, 60 kilo. So these are levels, they're very low. So this climatic effect was very, very strong. 3 events, and we risk having the 4th. That's not permanent, that's a cyclical, and we cannot forecast. I cannot give a presentation of the crop forecast and talk just about today. How am I going to tell you what's going on in the crop if we do not have really touch the greening? Do you know how much Pittimer and Beauvais estimated that Florida would produce in this year? 50 million boxes. You know how much they produced? 48. They called him crazy, but we knew they were right. What happens in Florida and here is that we have a competitive advantage. There we have a high density of plants in the groves. It's a shallow soil, a poor soil, but the main factor is citrus growers. Here we have to understand is that there is no disease that is as complex in the world as greening. We have not been able to grow bacteria. You know how many $1 million Florida has invested in 8 years? $2 billion. They hired SWAT. California joined in. The world is behind this, after this. We do not know the pathogenicity of the disease. It's a bacteria that is opportunistic, will cause imbalance in the plant. The symptoms for stubborn disease and greening are the same. They will affect this root system, so will cause this imbalance in general. Plant will absorb less sap, will not translocate it. If you have a trench in the plant that has greening and another one that does not, you see the root, and the difference is remarkable. So the key is, and we have to look at this increasingly more, and agronomical people helped us, Quaggio, Dirceu, Cantarella, they helped us know that we have to work with the root system increasingly more to minimize the effect. Now the insect, the symptoms will appear 6 months later than the insect is there. We have to work on this tripod with the healthy nursery plants, So we have to bring nursery plants to places that are free of the disease. And here, due to a suggestion of the technical committee, here they say, what about the future? If you have 38% and at level 2, 3, or 4, what's going to happen? Renato and Watson had studied this effect in orange and lemon in depth. But this year, we carried out a study designed by Barbosa and his team of a 750 plant in the 3 major varieties, Hamelin, Pera, and Valencia. The result is the same. I'm going to sum up it all for you. The slide is very important. So let's say, here we have measured healthy plants at level 1, 2, 3, and 4. 4 whole plant, level 1, 25%. Okay, so what we can see is that trees, or rather fruits per tree, let me compare level 4 with a healthy one. 623 healthy plant, same plot, as compared to 247 level 4. The fruit is much smaller, first effect. The second effect is not measured here. The healthy plant produces 2.2. That is 85 kilo of orange. How much will the level 4 plant produce after 5 years of the disease? 30 kilo. So what is the average density for the state of Sao Paulo? 500 plants. If you have 100% of oranges with greening, we are going to produce 15 tons. How much China produces? Vietnam, 10, 15, not more than that. How much is Florida producing? The yield there, less than 20 kilos. It's not level 4 anymore, it's level 5. The plant is contaminated when it's really young, so the effect is even more dramatic. So this is the Achilles heel for the sector. If we do not do our homework, what Beauvais wrote in 2010, 2009, if you're not smarter than dealing with the disease and the insect, will not succeed. But I have good news, because we have learned. The good news is, Marcos, usually Vinicius, he usually let me sleep 3 hours every night. If I don't sleep, I don't work. Last year, today I'm calmer. Yesterday I went to bed 1 a.m. and I was, up at 6. So he let me sleep 5 hours. Last year I was kind of confused. But anyhow, this is just to play with you. And this is Dr. Monaco is to blame. He will send me a message at 2 in the morning. Barbosa also with this complex equation, and and I am to blame, right? Okay, Vinicius, let's go on. So I have a group of people here, in California. Here it's us, not Juliano, but I'm saying that Fundecitrus was awarded in 2019 as a reference institution for the control of greening worldwide. Everyone is learning from us. The most important presentation in the last Congress, what was it? Fundecitrus team. FAPESP said something, Marcos, that I didn't know. You know how many private companies we have in Brazil that carries out research? 5,000. The director of FAPESP said that we are among the 10th company that publishes the most. 10 companies that publish the most. And we are not interested in publishing papers. We want to solve the problem. If papers, if we cannot solve the problem, then papers are worth nothing. Last year, yes, I'm going to give you good news. It's coming. Last year, when we had the 2024, I had a question mark because I knew that the tsunami was coming. The tsunami was coming, was approaching. And that kept me up at night. The phone would ring all day long. Growers would say, oh, my grove is suffering. And we were not able to completely understand what was going on. We understood only part of the game. What's the most important thing that we need? Diagnosis and fast action. If you do not have the correct diagnosis, you treat it wrong and then you're dead. So the psyllid population started to increase, but we are spraying more. We are improving the application technology. What's going on? And then the good news comes. If we do not know your enemy, you're dead. When you get to know your enemies, then you know their weaknesses. So we see, okay, the disease has increased. Okay, the inoculum increased. You have to move away from the high inoculum areas. The disease will come from outside in. But we have discovered that even in regions where we have no citrus, like Araçatuba, Presidente Prudente, there, the very end of Capão Bonito, in part of the West Minas Gerais, you know how many plants in the backyards are there? Non-commercially, 30-40%. Greening comes from the plant, not from grasses, sugarcane, but rather from plants that are 5 kilometers away. We have always advocated for that. We have eradicated 5 million plants. You know how much we spend on that? $10 million. You know how much California spent for $40 million a year, So here, the population has grown because this insect here has changed. This insect has changed. And we made a mistake. As Beauvais said, do not plant next to a contaminated grove with high inoculum if you do not have the control of a psyllid. You're going to get into a cage with the lion, and the lion's going to eat you up. There's no technology in the world to plant orange in Florida today. That is endemic already there. There's no way. And the insect is more aggressive now. Vinicius, let's run because we do not have a lot of time. Let's go fast. So this is the new psyllid, as I call it. I talked to Alberto Ferrer and other researchers. You know what I had to learn, Marcos? Probably you learned from your father. I'm not really smart. I have a brother that's much smarter than I am. But anyhow, I've always tried to talk to the best. So Dr. Monaco, do you think that he planted where he planted his groves, in the best place by chance? No, he said, what's the best place? And he planted there. So what it shows us is two things, in fact, that change the psyllid. Pyrethroid is the worst insecticide that there is. Parra, that is the best entomologist in Brazil, used to say, we have a time bomb here. We have a dimatoate, another insecticide, and then it went out of the market. And then farmers just started to use imide and pyrethroid. Do you know what the good news is? Researchers will knock on my door, and usually to bring me problems, right, Dr. Monaco? And what about the good news? When they have good news, they hide them from me. But yesterday I heard about the good news, and they said, what good news? Do you know that with this whole movement that we're doing, the imide in the field was killing 50% in the past. Now it's killing 80%. Rotation works. We have more molecules coming with oil. So we have to be smarter with this animal. So the resistance is reversible. Celso Moto already said that. Second, the world has taught us recently that when the insect, the psyllid, is infectious, what happens with them? They migrate more. They will go longer distances, and it reproduces more, multiplies more. So that's why the population increased. We are spraying more. So there is selection, resistance. The insect multiplies more, and it will fly longer distances. This tripod, Liberbacter, psyllid, this tripod that is formed with all that, is as explained by Darwin or Walter. He says, I've never worked with such a complex insect He almost got a Nobel Prize, that he worked with the pheromone. So we are dealing with a different insect, but now we know the insect. We know what's going on. So we have to be careful about the surroundings, choose the area, have rotation, integration. With all that we call the 10 Commandments, then we're going to win. So some things are interesting. In California, they showed the effect of organic matter. When you use more organic matter, the severity and intensity of symptoms are lower. You didn't see that, Kashmana? There? Or are you sleeping? Sometimes you sleep, Don't let Pedro Moreira Salles find it out. But anyhow, why all that? The root is the basis of everything. The deeper the root, the less stress there is, more yield and so forth and so on. So we have to have work in the root system, nutrition. Why is that, what we did in the soybean, we increased nutrition, calcium or potassium. In orange trees, the most important nutrient is calcium, is the basis. Rodrigues has worked for many, many years. And he would say calcium, calcium, calcium first, and then the rest. Irrigation, of course, that in specific situations today with the price of land, irrigation is almost mandatory today. And then things are not easy to us. There is a dilemma in the world. This is a question that we have not fully answered, but if a psyllid that takes after it acquires the bacteria and transmitted it and symptoms came up 6 months later in the plant, is that going to be the same effect that you're going to have with no psyllid? The speed of the disease is going to be the same. Work with Xylella and other organisms showed that no. And in Florida, they do not control psyllid. That is a mistake. Today, we are controlling psyllid, and we have two things to think of. If they contaminate a plant that is 2 years old, it's not going to even bear fruit. If they will contaminate a plant that is 10-year-old, the process is going to be slower. And even if we have a high incidence of disease, it's important to continue to control the psyllid with insecticide, to keep the neighbor plant healthy, and for that plant that is already sick has lower infection, because multiple infection speeds up the severity process. So that's important. It's not that you have to think about your neighbor proper farm, but for you to keep your own growth for longer. And what else? This has been studied in depth, and especially by Fundecitrus, Lopes, Miranda, Renato. Here we did something kind of rough here. What happens in the north? Bebedouro upwards. Votuporanga, Triângulo. The rains are more concentrated. The shooting flow is more concentrated. It's induced by rain or irrigation. Very dry winter. Psyllids only transmits to the new shoot, not to the old shoot. When João Lopes tried to do that, and Pedro Yamamoto in the first year, they were beat up. It was just 5% transmission, whereas and if it's a young shoot, it's 90%, 95%. So when we have a controlled shooting, it's better. If you trim a lot, it's a problem. We have to take care of the shoots. So in the north, let's say the temperature is higher, and that's unfavorable for the bacteria. Above 32, 35, publications have shown that the population of the bacteria goes down. So that makes it difficult for the insect to transmit the disease, and the population of the insect is lower. So those marginal areas, they're not good for the bacteria, and the greening are also not good for the orange, because they're too high temperature and less favorable for the disease. It's a counterintuitive. So we have to if you plant in an area where you have adverse climate, you have to manage irrigation. And what's going on in the central region? That's where we have the optimal situation for the orange. But that's where the diseases has this incidence here. What about the southwest region? Itapetininga, Capão Bonito. That's too cold there. Although bacteria has good conditions, it's not good for the insect. So although the center and southwestern regions have good conditions for the plant, southwestern is not good for greening. Dr. Monaco already reprimanded me. They said, well, we have to have some zoning here, climate zoning for the whole Brazil. We are working on it. We never stop. And that is something that shows what I commented before about. You see, in the city of, what's the first? Barretos, we have 91 days out of the 300 days that we have good conditions for the psyllid to reproduce. In Matão, 136 days, because we have a more continuous shooting. We have irrigation and rainfall. And here, 154. So the best place to plant orange is the place where we have more possibility of a greening to develop. But you can plant there. Isolated area, control. Use your intelligence. Do not face the lion head on. So here, we have data that we should look at with a grain of salt. Here we have almost 16,000 plants, 91% still in the citrus belt, 9% outside. Data is from CDA, it's a secretary. So here we have a nursery plant coming from Bahia. Well, that's not accounted for. It's not an absolute number because of that. We do not have that information, but it's a trend. Here, yellow is the citrus belt, gray, be careful about it, cautious, because gray is where greening is present. We had a survey, and someone told us about it. We went there, confirmed that. But greening goes much beyond that, This is where we confirmed. Well, what's the good news? Low incidence still. There's no, we have isolation. There's no other citrus. So we cannot leave those regions, or let those regions to become what happened in Limeira, right? Young, you're the vice president and Monaco is the president. We have a governor too. And he is willing to join us in this war. That is to use all our weapons, education, research, and create zoning as a strategy also. Each micro region will have a different situation, and we have to have a remedy that is different for each region. Here, if you were to plant laranja in orange in Goiás, Mato Grosso do Sul, and Minas, it would be called crazy. Now they're trying to do so. Right? We have the microclimate. They're doing that now. It's isolated areas. So the citrus belt, before, what was intelligent? To plant close to the juice companies. But now, what's the most strategy areas for us to mitigate the effect of greening, even if freight is more expensive, and also labor and all those other factors. Other states do not have the best conditions as São Paulo does, in terms of infrastructure, labor. What else, Vinicius? Here in Campanha and Minas, we have an endemic situation. You say, well, in west and southwest Minas Gerais, you see the situation here. So let's have an agreement with the Secretary of Mato Grosso do Sul, Minas, Paraná, and São Paulo, and set forth a strategic plan jointly, dividing regions, zoning everything, and seeing how we act in each situation. All secretaries are working in research and development as well as FAPESP. They're willing to invest heavily on science to solve this problem with research, then with brilliant people. Next. So here, just to remind ourselves, Florida has an incredible disadvantage. If you go upward towards Disney, we have no frost. If you go south, then it's marsh. If you go to the left, you die because you're going to be drowned, because it's ocean. What about Texas, California? California, water, is worth $1 million there. We have no water there. It's more for table, for fresh fruit. So where in the world of 129 countries that have orange, what's the best place? There's no best place. No better place than here. We have the best quality, the best yield, but we have to face that lion. Chinese. Do you think Chinese are fool? I work with Chinese. He wouldn't tell me anything. He would just work. And I said, and then I went to China. First time they rode bikes, and then the second time they had bicycles. Oh, they had motorcycles, 30-year cars. And you know what they did? In 2006, we had a meeting in Ribeirão, and a Chinese guy said, I'm going to go and talk to the Department of Agriculture, and we are going to talk about mayors, and we're going to have an integrated work to see what's important. I said, okay. So those that are not spraying and eradicating, when they, there is like a wedding, they do not invite that guy. So, and they had zoning, and we know where there's a lot, where there's little, and where there's none. And they're playing around in terms of where to plant, or like here, let's not plant, there, let's be careful. And citric culture is growing, and they're, of course, investing in research. Nothing what comes out of China. It might be that we have some good news coming out of China, but so far we have nothing. But so China has learned from us too, right? And they're making it happen. What about other countries? Costa Rica follows Beauvais' 10 commandments. You know how much they have in terms of grading? Less than 1%. And Costa Rica is a little bit destroyed. System works. Cambuí is here as an example. With this complexity, we have to perfect, to improve, to move on. So are we going to eradicate plant the whole time? Young, every time Beauvais came here, he would come and go see you, right? I always talk about Beauvais, And I had the privilege of working with someone for 19 years that he was worth a Nobel Prize, Beauvais. He knew everywhere, all the world. Everything he said took place. So let me talk about 5 or 6 things. Have you learned anything from this old guy? Even before he passed, right? Juliano, he said, I'm not sure we are going to be able to, win in the situation with the greening. We have to spray, we have to educate, we have to raise awareness of everyone to work together. A time will come where the insect will become resistant, that Europe will boycott insecticides, that citrus growers will think that the disease is not as serious and will no longer eradicate, and the system may go into collapsing. There's just one way to solve this problem, Juliano. We have to use biotechnology. We have to be the best in the world. In Florida, Bausch. What's the best in Europe? Leandro Peña, okay. And then there was no plant, no citrus plant that was resistant until he passed. That's when we had the resistant plants. So he said we have to go around it to deal with the problem. In Vietnam, groves that have a guava have no greening. It's a repelling effect. Parra showed that. Leandro knows how to work with our team and the Fundecitrus has invested in this lab that we have for us to have a repelling plant. Because if you have a refuge area and a plant that is repellent, it might be that we have the reference. Also, we can have a Bergera or jasmine orange that are also plants that we can use in our strategy. If we have, we don't have the silver bullet, but we might have 10 brass bullets until science brings something new. You know what happened? For the first time, we have announced, and our board already knows, we have an experimental area next to us here that was an area we leased from Dr. Jacques. And after 4 years, we have the design made by Barbosa with our team. Large experiment, more than 30 hectares, 4 types of repellent plants, Pera and Valencia. Valencia plants has 2 events. They have lower than 50% of greening. That in plots of 300 plants. What if it were 300,000? What if I have all this intelligence put into the system? It's not going to be 50%. It might be that it's 10. But what's our idea then? Border plots, vigorous rootstock. That's going to be the bumper area, you know, like a cushioning. So if you want to visit, you know, we are very careful in this area because there is a fear in the world that the modified organism, genetically modified organisms are, you know, a problem and in the world. So anyhow, in the borders we have vigorous rootstock, like a rankpur, right? Now inside few planting areas, and you can have swango and other rootstocks. And then we have the control of the border, of the edge, and then we have a systemic use of products. So what is the ideal plot format? It's an isolated area with less inoculum. So if you put all those factors together, I expect that even, you know, just like we did with CVC, even if we do not have the silver bullet, we are going to have a good solution. And we have to have a refuge area. We're going to put the repellent plant inside. Also, we have other things to use that we can use as repellent. So we are going to use all this intelligence in the system, you know the difference in terms of productivity of yield. We're going to use a kaolin as well. And what about in the furrow? You know, we are studying that. The world will have to go that way. So we are working with the Department of Agriculture, CNT Bio. It's that's the hope for the future. You know how much you're going to pay in terms of royalties? 0. This is for everyone, you know. So if the plant is lower in size, you can harvest better, and maybe in the mid and long term, you can have a mechanical harvest. So what's our dream? Our dream is, when CVC came up in 1987, Victoria Rosette talked to Beauvais, and then Beauvais in a week said, it was his sister, and he said, I have good news. It's not greening, it's a new bacteria. It's a Xylella that happens in coffee, attacks coffee and grapes. This pathogen came up, and it's transmitted by leafhopper. It's going to be similar to greening. At that time, we didn't use insecticide. The nursery was open, and we put together the 6 most intelligent people to talk about this. And they said, well, citriculture is going to be destroyed. For 1 or 2 years, some people did not plant. Juliano was young. I lived in Florida. I learned something from Spain. I was forced to come here. I worked at a different company at the time. And then I thought the challenge was major. Ademeval and we went, we talked to the best brains. And what happened in terms of research? We won the commitment to return to pay back to FAPESP and the governor. We have to take on the commitment of seeing that as a state problem. Some people said that we threw away money, in the past because of the genome project. But now we can work with the sequencing as we couldn't before. We discovered the insect, we discovered the epidemiology, and we could solve some problems with that. And we always have to thank this gentleman here, because the dream of the repellent plant was his. And you know what the good news is? We know how to get the resistance source. I just came from Australia. They signed an agreement with us. They're going to supply us with all the materials we need. For how much? Nothing, because they are afraid. Psyllid, greening, they're 100 kilometers away from them. If it comes there, they're going to be done. So we have the best people in Australia, Europe, to overcome this problem. So, if we have competence and we are brave, is greening going to beat us? Is this crop going to go down to 150 million, or is going to go the other way around? I'd like to thank the president of our board, the chairman of our board, and for all the support that we have had. So thank you so much. Let's face this challenge together. Thank you, Juliano, for another very important lesson on our citrus industry. As we have seen, we have a scenario of challenges, hope for the development of research, and at the same time, a lot of work in and out of the field. I'd also like to thank the coordinator of PES and partner at Marquestrat, Vinícius Trombin, for his contribution. Technology is increasingly present in PES, and the whole sector gains from these advances. We have reached now a very special moment in our meeting. But before, I just would like to say that our broadcast through YouTube has come to more to 97 countries, almost 100, and more than 400 people are with us online. The broadcast is both in English and Portuguese. Now I'd like to invite you to deep dive into the sustainability of our citriculture and get to know what often goes unnoticed by our eyes, but which is there, right in the middle of our groves, in the preserved areas. It's our fauna. Right now, let's present an important research developed by Embrapa Territorial together with Fundecitrus that was financed by Innocent Drinks, an English company. It is a very enriching work that quantifies the fauna, the wildlife in our citrus belt. The study identified more than 300 species of wild animals in 5 orange farms. Mainly birds and mammals were found circulating or living in citrus production environments. The work, we already know, estimated the carbon stocks of the citrus belt as well. There are 36 million tons of carbon, which is equivalent to 133.4 million tons of carbon dioxide removed from the atmosphere. This gas is one of the main causes of global warming. Let's watch the video.
O Fundecitrus foi criado pelos produtores para fazer pesquisa e ser competitiva do ponto de vista da produção, da preservação ao meio ambiente e também do trabalhador. Com isso, nós conseguimos, na política da sustentabilidade, trabalhar em áreas que normalmente a pesquisa não se envolvia diretamente. Nós estamos mostrando à sociedade como um todo que, apesar da produtividade e da competitividade, o impacto sobre o meio ambiente é relativamente menor. Nós podemos demonstrar e estamos confirmado que para cada 3 hectares de laranja, nós temos 1 hectare preservado de mata natural ou com a fauna e a flora da mesma região e com muito cuidado para que se preserve no longo do prazo, facilitando e evitando que os trabalhos agronômicos impactem sobre esses dois segmentos.
A parceria da Embrapa iniciou-se com a utilização da metodologia que eles desenvolveram para obter a área de preservação ambiental das cadeias produtivas do agronegócio. Os dados da PES possibilitaram a identificação, a localização e a área das propriedades de citros. Os dados do CAR, Cadastro Ambiental Rural, disponibilizado pelo governo brasileiro. Então, cruzando esses dados do CAR com os dados da PES, em todas as propriedades do cinturão citrícola, descobrimos que existem 160 mil hectares de área de preservação ambiental nessas propriedades.
O projeto se dá no contexto de dois grandes temas mundiais. O primeiro é em relação às mudanças climáticas e o segundo é a conservação da biodiversidade. E eles estão sob o guarda-chuva de duas convenções organizadas pela Organização das Nações Unidas. O projeto ele foi concebido em parceria com o Fundecitrus, um grande parceiro nosso. A ideia era a gente realmente saber qual que é a contribuição dos produtores rurais, especialmente da citricultura, em relação às mudanças climáticas e à biodiversidade. Nós avaliamos 80 árvores diretamente, de forma destrutiva. Avaliamos essas árvores, medimos elas em campo, pesamos elas, levamos para o laboratório, secamos e calculamos a quantidade de carbono por parte de cada planta. Em média, uma planta de laranjeira tem 50 quilos de carbono. Sintetizando os resultados do projeto, contabilizamos 36 milhões de toneladas de carbono no cinturão citrícola do estado de São Paulo e Minas Gerais. Isso representa 133 milhões de toneladas de CO2, demonstrando a grande contribuição dos citricultores para a mitigação das mudanças climáticas.
A Embrapa constituiu há mais de 30 anos uma equipe sobre avaliação de fauna silvestre em sistemas agrícolas. Nesse trabalho estamos realizando sobre a citricultura, de avaliação da biodiversidade de fauna silvestre, foram designadas 5 fazendas. Essas 5 fazendas representam 5 áreas piloto, onde nós deveríamos fazer levantamentos de campo para conferir, detectar, qualificar e quantificar o número de espécies de animais silvestres que ali vivem. E aí foi importante para nós começar esse trabalho justamente olhando essas 5 áreas e mapeando através de imagens de satélite quais são os ambientes que ali são oferecidos para a fauna, porque isso vai fazer uma grande diferença. Em geral, para ver as espécies, a gente utiliza algum instrumento. O binóculo é um deles, porque aproxima bastante e nos permite identificar sem erro, sem margem de erro, de qual espécie se trata. Mas também a gente usa outras coisas, como esse tipo de câmeras de trilha que a gente chama. São câmeras fotográficas, como essa aqui, que nós espalhamos ao longo do território, que funciona tanto de dia quanto à noite, e pode fotografar, filmar. Nós encontramos 314 espécies de vertebrados silvestres, o que é um valor considerável, sendo 268 de aves silvestres. No caso dos mamíferos, nós encontramos cerca de 28 espécies de mamíferos, é um número razoável. Quando nós fizemos algumas análises estatísticas, essas análises apontaram com certeza absoluta de que é possível haver ainda um ganho de pelo menos 30% em espécies desse valor que nós obtivemos. Para apenas 5 fazendas de citricultura, podemos dizer que a citricultura está promovendo biodiversidade de fauna e convivendo muito bem com ela. Com certeza eu tenho é que o Brasil é um país que mais preserva fauna silvestre dentro das suas propriedades agrícolas, particularmente também na citricultura. E nenhum país do mundo é capaz de competir com o Brasil se a gente colocar isso como indicador ambiental, preservação da biodiversidade de fauna silvestre. O Brasil é imbatível.
It's really rewarding to see all that in our groves. And also it's important to know that citrus growers are doing their part by taking care of those spaces. They are so fundamental for us to have rich biodiversity. Citriculture is made more beautiful by the colors and beauty of so many animals. This undoubtedly greatly renews the commitment of all of us to sustainability. Questions and answers. So let's continue our event. Now it's time for the Q&A session on the 2024-2025 crop. I'd like to ask you to come up to the stage and take your seats. General Manager of Fundecitrus, Juliano Aires. Our President, Dr. Monaco. Executive Coordinator of PES, Vinícius Trombin from Marquestrat, Unesp Professor and Statistics Coordinator, José Carlos Barbosa, Political, Institutional and Methodological Coordinator of PES, Board Member of Marquestrat and Professor at USP de Ribeirão Preto and FTV, Marcos Fava Neves, and representing Embrapa, Researcher José Roberto Miranda. To begin this part of our meeting, I would like the researcher from Embrapa, José Roberto Miranda, who coordinated the research on the survey of fauna on some farms in our citrus belt, to tell us a little more about this work. I would like to ask a question, José Roberto. What surprised the researchers during this work, and what's the importance of it for our environment? Thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here with you and participate in such an important meeting for the citrus production sector. I was really surprised, first, with the number of species that we found vis-a-vis the efforts that we made to do our work, to carry our work. Because when we had the mathematical algorithm used, we saw the possibility of even growing the number of species 30%, maybe, that would take us to an approximately 100 additional species in the wild fauna. What surprised me then was to see the level of conservation that citriculture has kept in terms of environment, and how that has caused and generated biodiversity by welcoming this wild fauna to live there in harmony. We have several species of carnivores like leopards and different types of cats that are threatened in terms of their continuity, and they were found in many occasions, not just one, but several occasions. And something else that surprised me was that and that takes us, makes us really optimistic in terms of this harmony between citrus growers and wildlife, especially vertebrates, is that we found many species with cubs, with offspring. So one thing is for you to find a species here that is moving around. Okay, it's a passage place, maybe a shelter, then or maybe this animal went there for food. But if we have reproduction of those species, it's because that species is really adapted to that place, and the population will increase in number and will guarantee their continuity there. That was really rewarding because several species, were found at a very significant number. And just so you know, those 268 species of birds that we found there represent more than 30% of the species that we have in the state of São Paulo, in all biomes, be it Atlantic forest. The state of São Paulo has only 800 species of birds. Well, it's not only, it's a lot, because in Europe we have 470 in 10 million square kilometers. So it's not that little, in fact. We have a very significant number. And I think that also, the willingness of citrus growers made us go after some information that could indicate or point to places where there's going to be a need of a certain recovery of permanent protection areas, so that we can give the opportunity to citrus growers to find vegetal species that will attract wildlife. That's going to be very positive, because if you attract wildlife with those species, they're going to come, they're going to defecate, they're going to disseminate seeds, and with that, we're going to be able to get away a little bit from the process, because then we create a connection between the vegetation, the flora, and the wild fauna. We're going to have the true forest planters working for us, and that's what we want. Ecology is interaction. It's not a science that studies the environment and the fauna. It's a science that will study the interaction between, for instance, the wild fauna and the environmental conditions. That's the interaction, and that's what we want to foster. And we are sure that the Brazilian citrus growers are going to be able to embrace that, as they have done. I congratulate the sector, because I know this is a very difficult sector to be in. Just look at this presentation before, by Fundecitrus and partners. And we see that this crop has 25 challenges in the field, without counting the challenges of being alone and having to really advocate for this product. But to wrap up, I would say that we at Embrapa Territorial, we have this commitment that is really significant with the agri-sector. In this case, the citrus sector. First is to help the sector grow in terms of sustainability. And the second is to check by means of indicators and indexes that are internationally acknowledged the competitiveness that is enlarged of the sector in relation to the world. Brazil is a champion to that sense. Congratulations to citriculture that lives in harmony with the wild fauna, considering it as part of the production process. Congratulations. Great news. It's good to know the result of such an important work. Thank you, and thank you for your participation. Please stay with us here. I'd like to thank you for being here. I also like to invite Lucila Alves Magalhães, researcher from Embrapa, to talk a little about this project, which shows so much wealth. Lucila, Fundecitrus and Embrapa Territorial are currently launching a series of videos on the fauna of our citrus belt, how our groves stock carbon, and the good practices in terms of sustainability. Is that so? Yes, right now at Embrapa and Fundecitrus channels on YouTube, you have 3 videos that have been produced by our project team, resulting in very educational materials about the carbon stock in production areas and preservation areas, data of the fauna, biodiversity, and sustainable practices. So I would like to invite you all, everyone here with us online also to access our YouTube channels, both for Fundecitrus and Embrapa. Also on our LinkedIn and Instagram, you have access to the videos. And also, I'd like to invite you to enjoy the topics that have been prepared with so much care, with beautiful pictures that have been taken during our work, and also on the Fundecitrus page and Embrapa's page, on websites. Our websites are going to see information about research work, graphs and tables that we have produced along the years. So I'd like to conclude by saying that I'm really happy to be here today. We have started by studying the rural registry of the fauna, and we wanted to know what the reach was of this environment commitment taken upon farmers in favor of the native vegetation preservation, to see the economic dimension of that, the land involved, and the team that is here today is really to congratulate. I'm glad that we are working in this environmental dimension in terms of this carbon stock and what is the value of this carbon in the future in the market that we have, that is an environmental asset. So congratulations to our teams at Embrapa, Fundecitrus, and the sponsor also of this study, that is Innocent Drinks. Thank you so much. We're really happy with your work. I'd like to immensely thank you for this, for carrying this out. It's good that you talked about this. I forgot to mention something important here. So research by José Roberto is going to be made available, and also our work at PES, the whole survey is going to be made available on our channels. And now it's an important time, that is the Q&A on the crop forecast survey. But Juliano would like to ask a question first, right? Yeah, I'd like to ask Marcos a question. You're kind of quiet, but you have a global view of the market, economy, and the world. How do you see, you as an agronomist and economist, how do you see the scenario that we are living today? It's important for you to give us your opinion and contribute. Thank you, Juliano. It's a pleasure to be here. We are getting older, and we like to go to places where we see success, work, and merit. And this is one important point for me, then, to be here. It is a day of shock to the international market. I don't know if you saw that. The price of orange juice in the stock market. We have new figures, a situation that was already worrisome. It's now alarming. And we that have been in the sector for 30 years, we always hope for the price, especially the concentrated FCOJ price in Europe, that is our top indicator. You remember when it was 2,200, and it even went down to $700 a ton of FCOJ. But yesterday I saw that it's about 5,500 or 6,000 a ton. So with that information now, we can see, with this information now, we can see that we went all out, right? So we have to really monitor the behavior of bottlers, the behavior of the retail, and the behavior of consumers, especially in Europe and in the United States. Because the juice that traditionally would cost €1 a liter of their own brand, private label, and €2 per liter of the differentiated product. It's now €2 the liter of the private label, and almost €4 for the differentiated product. Something that we still do not know of is what the effect that is going to have on consumption. If the consumption is well positioned for the higher income population that are not concerned about if they're paying $1 or $2 more, then we go on. Maybe you're going to come to a more sustainable level of prices. If the consumption goes down and the production in Brazil for sure is going to go up because orange costing 60, 70 reais a box, people are going to be encouraged to expand. Juliano challenged me, right? 23,000 new hectares. So I think the trend now is to go up to 30, 35,000 in new areas. So just to close and not to take long, what is the impact of the consumption of those incredible prices that we have had because of the supply? If we have no impact, if the impact is reasonable or it's possible to be absorbed, great news. And what is the impact in terms of production and supply due to the profitability of the sector? Now, let's see how fast things move. We're going to know all about this in 6 months or 1 year to see how the sector is going to regain balance. But now we went all out. It was already complicated, and now we're going to have 232 million boxes, which is little in face of the world market. Even if it's stable or a little bit downward, now Florida has vanished, right? So it's a situation that is more complex to analyze now. But 2 points. So we have to see the front part of the chain, consumption, and to see the encouragement for production. But if you're able to follow the recipe, to decrease the greening incidence by trusting science, we have a lot of merit in terms of science. If we are able to solve that, this is a sector that is going to continue bringing to Brazil $2.5 billion a year. And if we do all we can, we're generating cash and taking care of the environment. Every time we come here, we have some bad news, but there's always wonderful news. This news about fauna has great global impact. So besides the preservation of forest, we have also the fauna together. And the fauna is helping back the forest, like it's the case of your presentation. So greening is a stateside or a countryside problem. So we have to try and make the most of trying to solve it. Thank you so much for clarification. Is there anyone here present that would like to make a question? Do you have any questions at this very delicate time citriculture is going through? In the back, please. Our board members, I would like to hear your opinion. Yeah. Johnny Gibran, Roberto, Delson. There is a question right there, Juliano. Please say your question. I think we can all contribute. You can all contribute with the answer. We are from Export, agricultural drone company, and we have had some demands in terms of spraying. So I'd like to know from you, the spraying methods may add to, in terms of new technologies to fight psyllids. What are the main pains of citrus growers in that sense? And how much this higher price will influence the decision making by growers in terms of acquiring new technologies? Thank you. Feel free. I think that is a question that is partly answered already. Fundecitrus has carried out work showing that in the case of psyllid, just like specific situations, a drone is a tool to be used. Today we have a company that I'm going to use as an example, that they have 3 drones to spray neighboring areas, complementary. So it's not going to replace the tractor spray and conventional spraying that is low volume, but it can be a tool that will be used as a complement. That is something we have to do. New technologies is something that the market adapts to. If it's worth incorporating, they will do so. So drones, I think that drones are going to be used as also in other crops, in specific situations. A drone for leprosis or black spot won't work. We need a higher volume for psyllid as a complementary control. It might be a good tool, but we have new drones, new technologies, and the trend of the drone, it might be that the drone of tomorrow is better than the drone of today. So I think it will be an option to be used. And new technologies are being incorporated every day. It's necessary. We have to reinvent and modernize, and Fundecitrus is open to all that. We are testing everything possible. Anybody else? So while you get ready for questions, let me ask a question that came to us through our YouTube channel. To you, Juliano. Meire Gomes, that is from Agroterenas, Brazil, asks, how is the fourth bloom, 16.4 million boxes? It's going to be harvested just next year, so do you think this number can be lower depending still on the climate conditions? It is a complex question because besides the fourth bloom, to our surprise, we have a fifth bloom coming up in some situations. This fifth bloom is not taken into account. We do not know its size. Now, the fourth bloom, as I explained, has been accounted for. Out of every 3 fruitlets we are considering, then one is going to turn into fruit at a relatively high rate. 20 to 50, that's what we used. So we used the average point because the orange tree has fewer fruit. Now in theory, we are going to have winter. So the chance, if we have humidity, is of a better fruit setting. However, the forecast of rains is not good. Now, in relation to flowers, we did the math. Out of each 100 flowers, 3 will turn into fruit. That is the high bar, elevated bar. So I think that this number, is really reliable. Because if we have any adverse climate, well, we are going to still have the fifth bloom. So one thing will offset the other. It's hard for us to assert that. It will depend a lot on the climate. I think there's another question here in the audience. There is one person before. I think there was one person that wanted to ask a question before. Then I'll give you the floor. Good morning. I'm Felipe. I am with Isal, the citrus industry. I am in Alto Uruguai, Rio Grande do Sul. And I have a question. I don't know who would like to answer. Do you have information on greening in Rio Grande do Sul? We have information given by Embrapa, but I'd like to use this opportunity to ask if you have information on greening in Rio Grande do Sul. Thank you. I can try and answer. Greening is in Uruguay. Greening is in Santa Catarina. Greening is in Argentina, in Rio Grande do Sul, next to Rio Grande do Sul. So when we say it's there or it's not there, we're talking about detection. There's no survey carried out in Rio Grande do Sul to look for it. So I would say with large possibility of getting it right, that greening is already in Rio Grande do Sul. You just have to scan it because it is on the border and the insect migrates. So Rio Grande do Sul has to worry about greening. Yeah, we have a colder weather there. Nurseries have to be protected like we do in Brazil. This disease is something you can contain just as fire. That is right at first. Once it spreads, it's really hard. So Rio Grande do Sul has the competitive advantage because you have not surveyed greening, but it's a problem that the government, the country government has to deal with. Hello, I would like to ask a question to Dr. Agro, that is the person that understands the most of agribusiness in Brazil. There was a quote that was important on the change of orange juice prices change to the new consumer. That's what I'd like to know about. Do you think that we have reached orange juice prices along the last 2 or 3 crops where the consumption has reached a different class that is of like a noble product, and then we can maintain the volume of orange juice consumed in the world? Thank you for your question. I think that this clarity of positioning somehow has already been attained. Even in Brazil, there's a public that will consume our premium juice. They're not concerned if it's 3 or 4 reais more in terms of price. So maybe we are going to have more niches, like a differentiated product with a higher price, and then the private label, own label, with a more nectar, or with a lower price on the market. But we do not know. Maybe a little bit of that has already taken place. But yes, we are going to drink premium juices in Brazil, those that are not worried about how much they pay. And if they just want a juice that is the orange flavored, will pay lower. So we're going to have the A and B niches. That's what I look. That's what I think is going to happen when I look at the future. Anybody else in the audience? Before I ask a question that was sent online? Okay, so this is a question that was sent through the internet to you, Vinicius. How is SPES getting ready to the expansion of citriculture to other states? As of August this year, we start the census, and then we are going to go to these expansion areas. The groves that have been planted more recently, we have the IBGE registry. We know where the nursery plants have come to, and we're going to scan those areas to bring the figures in May next year. Possibly we're not going to include all the areas for the crop forecast. That is a decision that we have to run by the technical committee to see the age of groves, their profile, and then we can reflect upon the expansion of the citrus belt as we know today. But we're going to map it all, and we are going to bring data in terms of planting, density, varieties, and everything next year, May 10th next year. Any other questions here? Let me just check if there's any other questions sent online. Let me check. There is one question here, Marcos. It's to you, but I think you already answered. That is from Mary Gomes, also asking about what the impact is to the international market with the crop announcement. Would you like to add? Thank you, Mary, for the question. But I'd like to use the time I have here to talk about something else here also. I have worked in agriculture in Brazil for 30 years. I'm very grateful for that, for this possibility, and it's good to see what you have done to the Brazilian society. But I do not consider today, if you say, what's your main concern today in terms of the next 10 to 15 years and Brazil's possibility of reaching the 50% of the sugar market worldwide, 40% in broilers, and well, it's not the greening, it's not the factors that I discussed here before, but I'd like to draw your attention to one factor that is my top concern in agriculture, because it comes up in every trips or I take, and in Brazil, that is labor, people. Today we have problems in terms of willingness, quantity, and skilling of people in Brazil. So we have a strategic plan for poultry and pork. in Brazil, and we are not able to hire people for those sectors. Same thing for bioenergy in Mato Grosso. So maybe just using your question, I'd like to say also this. Because we're having shortage of labor also in our case, because Orange also takes a lot of intensive labor. Okay, I'd like to thank you all for participating and for the questions you have asked. It's important to thank you, all of you that have understood us, understand more of this reality of how to fight this disease. And we are now moving to the end of our meeting. If you have any questions, still pending answers, our communication team will send you an answer afterwards. Now, would like to thank the companies that are friends of growers, the Department of Agriculture and Livestock and Supply, FAPESP, that is a research company in the state of São Paulo, and the production chain of citriculture, also Innocent Drink, Citrus Growers, and the juice companies Citrosuco, Cutrale, and Louis Dreyfus for yet again allowing their groves to be part of a sampling, and also for informing us of the average fruit size supplied to us along the crop for industrial processing. Our deepest thanks to all the participants of the board of Fundecitrus. I'd like everyone working with PES to stand up to receive our thanks, and a round of applause for the work carried out. Congratulations on your work. It's so relevant. It's unquestionable. The summary of the crop forecast survey will be published at the end of our broadcast on the Fundecitrus website, and its full report will be available soon. On behalf of Fundecitrus, I would like to thank everyone who joined us, people that were here with us in person or on our broadcast through YouTube. Best wishes on your crop season. See you next time.